You are listening to the Franchise Business Real Talk podcast hosted by me, Coffey. I'm a franchise industry veteran with a perspective that most people in franchising don't have. I'm a franchisor and I'm a franchisee. Living and serving in both of these roles helps me understand challenges and see opportunities that some people can't see. I love franchising and want to see everyone in it win. The guests I have on the show and my own experiences shared here are our way of helping you do just that, win in franchising. I hope you enjoy the show. Today on Franchise Business Real Talk, I have the honor of speaking with the lease coach, Mr. Dale Willerton, and we're just going to go over some of the things that franchisees, franchise owners should look for in their lease and lease renewals, and some of the expertise that Dale has that has really helped out a lot of people over the years. So Dale, thank you very much for joining me on the program.
It's my pleasure. This is the most fun I have all day, giving seminars and doing podcasts and webinars.
That's awesome. So Dale is the author of the book Commercial Lease Negotiations for Dummies. There it is right there. Negotiating Commercial Leases.
Negotiating and Renewals.
Commercial Leases and Renewals for Dummies. And so before I give the microphone over to Dale to talk a little bit about who he is and what he does and how he does it, I just wanted to kind of tell a little story how me, as a longtime franchise owner, on the franchisee side and as a franchisor, I've had that book for a lot of years, and I was coming up on a lease renegotiation notice period for one of our leases, and I decided to just look through the book again and go to my dog-eared pages, and I had missed completely before because I always looked at that book when I was actually doing a lease, not when I was actually going to renew it, but I decided to take a look at it. Chapter 4, part 4 of the book, chapters 16 and 17, I read them and I was like, I've been missing the boat for literally since 2016 on lease renewals. I thought I would check a box, send them a notice that I was going to renew, and never saw that the opportunity is there to renegotiate from a way stronger space. So if you're listening to this and you're a franchise owner or a franchise business coach that's helping people out, do not miss this opportunity. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about that. But it is a huge opportunity to improve your business's bottom line performance by improving your lease, which is oftentimes your number one expense. So Dale, thank you for writing the book. And I'm glad something drew me to part 4. And then we actually worked together on that lease renewal, and it's going swimmingly. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you've been doing, and then we'll go from there.
Well, prior to 1993, I used to work for landlords. I was a shopping center manager. I was a commercial leasing agent. I spent all my day helping landlords get better deals from tenants. And I realized very quickly that it wasn't the landlord that needed my help, Guy. It was the tenant. The tenants were coming into my mall office. They were saying the wrong things. They were doing the wrong things and making all the typical leasing mistakes and leaving an awful lot of money on the table they could have asked for. Okay. So in 1993, I stopped working for landlords and I switched to the tenant side. And unlike a broker who might call themselves a tenant rep, I'm not a broker. I'm not an attorney, but this is my 30th year in business as the lease coach. So I learned this business. Thank you. I learned this business on the landlord side. That's part of what makes me so effective working for the tenant. I'm like an industry insider, right? And the book that you mentioned, my For Dummies book, that's actually my 3rd book. And so it's really been a passion project and a passion career for me. It's much more fun and fulfilling and rewarding to help tenants who really need it than, help landlords get richer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I, as one of those people that have benefited from that and all the franchise owners and business coaches out there, we're glad to have you on our side. And having that education of doing it from the opposite side for so long, it's hard to beat that kind of experience, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Can't learn about that at university.
When I'm negotiating a lease for a tenant, it's really impossible to intimidate me because I know those landlords are just going home to their families and their kids like you and I do, right? They're just regular people. But for some reason, landlords tend to get elevated to this position that they don't really deserve. And there's a little bit of fear factor on the part of the tenant when they're dealing with the landlord. They often tell me that, right? They're just intimidated, and I'm never intimidated when I go one-on-one with the landlord.
Sure. Yeah, because you know what the opportunities and the advantages are from their side and from both sides of the
Yes.
deal. That totally makes sense.
Mhm.
So, how do you provide your services? And is it, I know the answer to this, but for the benefit of the audience, is it mutually exclusive to
Mhm.
someone that, say, worked with a broker to sign the lease that they're in right now?
Well, it's important to understand that in America, there are 2 million lease renewals every year. Okay. 2 million commercial, retail, office, food service lease renewals. That's the bulk of the market. That's 90% of the lease transactions that are being done. The business owners who are going out and opening a second or third location or relocating their location, that's in that 10 to 15% category. And here's what's important to understand. In the commercial real estate world, which is broker driven, landlords are willing to pay commissions to brokers when they bring in a new tenant that fills a vacancy, right? Most of my clients are coming to me because they want me to negotiate a better lease renewal deal for them. And landlords won't pay a broker commission on lease renewals for the most part. So your broker might be useless to you on a lease renewal. Might be helpful to you on a
Mhm.
new lease, but on a lease renewal, that's questionable. So I fill that gap. I'm kind of in between what a broker does and what an attorney does. I'm right there in the middle, kind of talking plain English to the tenant and making sure they don't make all the silly, stupid, costly mistakes that other tenants have made.
Yeah. And I'm going to interject on that just from a real world perspective because I'm exactly the person that needs your service in that case. So for years and years and years, when the lease renewal came up, I would put a note on my calendar for 4 years if I had to give 210 days notice or 180 days notice. Like, oh, don't forget to send them a letter that I want to renew. I want to stay in that space. And so it never occurred to me I wouldn't call it my broker to send an email like, hey, I want to renew, right? I'm not going to do that. So they don't have to be involved from that perspective.
Right.
And the landlords, they probably love that, just getting like, oh, I'm checking the box and we don't have to renegotiate. And then after looking at part 4 of the book, it just kind of like, boom, like, holy cow. Because most franchisees that,
Right.
they're especially in their first unit, if it's not a multi-unit, multi-brand person or something like that, they worked with that broker. They sweated that deal. They really sweated when they signed that personal guarantee, and then when it comes and the business is going good and they're like, oh, this is easy. All I have to do is say like, I want to stay here. And I get my next, option period or whatever, not realizing that like a
Mhm.
little bit of work, not even much work, all of a sudden you're not some new person with a new business. You've been in there for 5 years. You've proved to them that you're a good tenant, paying on time, not being a nuisance, things like that. You can renegotiate from a completely different position. And that's what your book kind of brought to light. And I'm like, just knocked me on the head. Like, there's so much opportunity. Like, of course they want me here. Of course they want my business here. I've been paying on time and doing
Yeah,
everything for 5 years. There's the risk is less, so their
that's
benefit
right.
from having me in there should be less. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, Gila, I want to put into perspective. It's very, very expensive for a landlord to replace a tenant. The space could be vacant
Mm,
for 4 months, 6 months, 8 months. They might have to pay a real estate commission. They might get a lower rental rate than you were paying. They're probably going to have to kick in some free rent and other inducements like an allowance, right? So it's much
mhm.
more beneficial for the landlord to retain existing good tenants. And if you're an existing good tenant and you have a renewal option, probably the biggest mistake traditionally made is exercising the renewal option. Okay. I've done over 1,300 lease renewal projects for tenants. 90, and this is really the crux of it right here. 98% of the lease extensions or renewals or amendments that I've negotiated, we have not exercised the renewal option, because in the bowels of the lease agreement, it traditionally says if you exercise the renewal option, the only thing that's potentially negotiable is the rent. Right. And when I negotiate a lease renewal for a tenant, I like to approach it as if, well, what would they have to give a new tenant coming into the building? Right. If they had to give a new tenant some free rent and give a new tenant some tenant allowance, why don't you give it to us? Why don't you give it to us, your good rent paying tenant that's been here for 5, 10, or 15 years? And maybe at the same time, we'll negotiate to eliminate the personal guarantee. Maybe we'll get your deposit back. Right? Things like that. So that's really what we're striving for when we negotiate a lease extension for a tenant.
And it's huge. And I don't think it's on a lot of people's, there's a lot of people that are smarter than me in this world, but I don't think it's on a lot of people's, mind about the lease renewal option being an unbelievable time to improve your position. It just seems like check the box, move on. And I just want to share how you helped me with our small studio lease here. So it was coming up for renewal, and I was gonna check the box, but I opened up the book and reached out to Dale and worked with him on a consulting basis to help me out with this. And we went from just going to our normal rent escalations for the next 5 years. We've been in this space for 10 years now, and it's coming up on another option period. And from just checking the box and my rent increasing 3% and doing the same, one of the things that just bookmark on this podcast is one of the things that Dale told me is you always want to be the batter and not the pitcher. And so remember telling me that? And
I do.
And
I preach it every day.
And it made such a huge difference. So per Dale's instructions, I reached out to the landlord, said, hey, do you want us as a tenant still? Oh yeah, of course we want you as a tenant. Okay, well, please send me, what the lease would look like if you wanted us to, be here for more years. That's being the batter, not the pitcher, not be telling them well, I want a lower lease and I want my security deposit back and I want some TI. So I just said, please send me what you would have us sign, in order to go for another 5 years. And in their first iteration to me, just because we have been a good tenant there, they actually lowered by 50 cents a square foot our base rental rate, and they offered X amount of dollars for tenant improvement money. I haven't even asked for it yet. So we're going back and we're going to say fine to that base rental rate because we love being in there. We don't want to move. But we are going to improve the tenant improvement allowance. That'll be $12,000 to $14,000 that I can use to refloor the place, repaint it, whatever the case may be. That as opposed to me checking a box and signing off for the next 5 years. That's a big difference. For a small business, that's gigantic. Also, getting our security deposit back that they've had for 10 years. I think we're pretty good for it. So, right? So how do you work with people? Because I know you fly around a lot because we're on the phone and things like that. And I know you have a couple different bases, but can you work with anybody, anywhere?
Well, about 50% of my clients are from the franchise industry. Okay. We get referred by a tremendous amount of franchisors. Franchisees find us on their own. I fly around America doing training at franchisee conventions, where all the franchisees get together and in a big hotel ballroom, and I come in and I train them on that. And I speak at a lot of different trade shows as well in different industries. So the franchise market is really big for me. But the franchise industry can be retail. It can be food service, right? There's all different kinds. And that's what I do. Now, when it comes to, I'm not sure if you're saying, the specific way that we work with tenants. And that's really comes down to two choices. I'm either going to coach you to do it yourself. I'm going to guide you through the process. I'm going to review every single document. I'm going to make recommendations, and I'm going to coach. Nobody even knows, Guy, that I'm working for you. They just think you got really smart really fast. right? That's a coaching
That's the
package.
option I took.
But that's right. Now, the vast majority of my clients actually hire me to do their negotiating. They turn that over to me and I become their spokesman. I get out in front of them and I don't have to tell them what to do. I tell them what I'm about to do for them. Okay. And part of what makes my job and my career and this entire industry so much fun to work in is it's never the same project twice, right? At any given moment, I'm doing a couple in California, a couple of leases in New York, Texas, Florida, you name it. I've got clients all over the country. And of course, I'm not the only lease coach. I've got a system and I've got a team. And so it's much different working in different areas of the country. Sometimes we have the upper hand and sometimes we don't, because you could be coming off of a 10-year lease term and you had signed a really low rent then, but market rents have changed now, right? You don't believe the landlord if the landlord tells you that, but you'll probably believe me because I did your market research, right? And I came back and said, hey, this is not a bad deal for you. We can still negotiate, but part of what tenants pay me for, Guy, is the peace of mind, right? Because I'm not trying to sell them. I'm not like a broker who's saying, well, the only way the broker eats is if you sign the lease. Yeah, sometimes I tell my clients, don't sign that lease. That's not the right deal. That's not the best deal. There's sometimes a mistake that tenants think, well, if I hire Dale, the process will go faster. Well, faster is not our goal. Better is our goal. A better deal, right? Because there's usually no reward for doing it fast, right?
Nope.
So that's what it comes down to. I can either coach you or I can negotiate for you, or sometimes a tenant will come to me a little late in the game. Like they'll say, well, we've already done most of this, but can you just do a document review? And so we do a 39-point lease inspection document review that I think is better than any attorney ever does, because what I'm explaining to the tenant, things like their assignment clause, which is the assignment clause is the number one way you're going to sell your business and assign the lease agreement. And I'll share an interesting story with you this morning. I do a lot of work with Firehouse Subs, their franchise system, and UPS and whatnot across the country. And a Firehouse Subs franchisee called me this morning for the first time. The franchisor referred him, said, call Dale. And he was approved to be a Firehouse Subs franchisee. He was negotiating to buy an existing store. Okay, you can open them or you can buy an existing store. And the landlord said, well, we're going to raise the rent $25,000 a year if you want us to assign this lease agreement to you. Now, what did that do? Well, that killed the sale. Right? That didn't really hurt this fellow that called me. He had nothing at risk, right? But the poor seller should have negotiated his assignment clause much more thoroughly 6 or 7 or 5 years ago whenever he signed his lease, because you should never put yourself in a position where the landlord can unilaterally raise your rent or withhold their consent to a lease assignment.
Right. Not to get too... Sorry, go ahead. Finish. I'm sorry.
Well, if you're not careful, the tenant will focus so much just on the surface rent deal that the other 25 pages of the lease agreement they'll almost ignore. And those can really come back to haunt you, right? If you don't look at them and if it's not explained to them, right? And it's so interesting, Guy, when I go through a lease agreement and I see, well, what's missing? And I say to the tenant, well, do you realize you're not entitled to park on the parking lot? You and your staff aren't entitled to park here. I know the landlord told you you'd get that sign panel, but it doesn't say that in your lease. We better write those things in. See, most of my work is not taking clauses out of a lease. It's putting clauses into a lease that levels the playing field, right? When I'm sent a lease, so imagine that this represents fair, okay? And let's say it's really leaning towards the landlord, right? The arm is way over here when I get the lease. I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to get the lease favoring the tenant, but at least I can get it there. I can get it in the middle where it's reasonable and fair.
Right.
That's what our goal is, right? Uh, I don't usually get my clients below market deals, but I very often help them avoid paying above market deals.
Right. And I think one of the things that we've talked about in the past is you can also improve the deal that on things that do matter to the tenant, but they don't really matter all that much to the landlord. Not as much as you would think, but their agreement is written totally in their favor, but there's much more latitude than you would think in some areas. In some areas, there's not. But you don't know unless you ask, right?
That's right. And I actually teach entire classes to business brokers because if you're going to sell your business, you can sell your business privately. You can sell it through a real estate agent. You can sell it through a business broker. And I give
Yep.
classes to business brokers because they get a seller, somebody who wants to sell their business. They find a buyer, a lot of effort. They find a buyer, and now the landlord's the obstacle. Can't get the lease
Hmm.
done, can't get the lease assigned.
Right.
And 50% of the time, we don't attempt to assign the lease. We actually go to the landlord and set up a scenario where the buyer gets a brand new lease, right? Because it's
Yep.
better to have a brand new lease in most cases than to take over someone's old lease that was poorly negotiated.
Yeah. Sometimes very poorly. Like I've seen that. And
Mhm.
that's an interesting area. I used to be a business broker a long time ago.
Mm,
And the lease is
okay.
the longest tail on a business transfer, a small business transfer. If it's brick and mortar, the lease is the longest tail on it. It takes the longest time. That, and if the assignment clause isn't good, it can really screw things up. So that's often a clause that people overlook. In your experience, it
Hmm.
sounds like that's the same thing that I found as well. So
Very much so.
that's interesting.
And, and,
50% of your
and
business is with franchisees.
Yeah, and oftentimes someone buying a business is um, it's such an exciting time for them that they just don't focus on the lease agreement. There's so many other things going on. Even if you're planning to open a new business and you're signing your first lease, it's not that the my average client is pretty darn smart. I don't get hired by dummies. I get hired by people that are smart enough to know they don't what they don't know,
Hmm.
and they hire an
Hmm.
expert to step in and do it for them because I'm a magnet gee for tenants with problems, and I often jokingly say, well, you can pay me now to help you up front and you can pay me later when you've got a problem, right?
Sure.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And it's the longest, um, it's the biggest, longest expense a franchise owner is going to have is the lease. It's usually 10 years,
Yeah,
usually
and
personally
it's
guaranteed
typically in the top three expenses. Yeah,
for sure.
it's
Yeah.
always
Depending on,
salaries, rent, and product, right? In most
Mhm.
cases
Right. And so
are
this
the
is
top
not an
three
area.
expenses for a business.
Yeah, this is not an area where you want to save money. And I have friends that are brokers. I was a business broker. I have really close friends that are leasing agents, things like that. So this is not a personal attack. It's just the way that the industry is set up is even the person that represents you as the buyer's agent, let's say,
Hmm.
they're getting paid by the landlord. And unless they're working on retainer, which most don't, they only get paid when they do sign that lease. It doesn't make them bad people or anything like that.
Yes.
That's just the structure of the deal. So I will just share that one of our top performing franchisees who's opening up a new studio in California has a broker, has done deals
Hmm.
with this broker before on numerous occasions. They've gone well, met you, and still hired you to help out looking at the deal. And someone could say like, well, that's extra money that you're going to spend on. Well, you're not spending anything on the broker because the landlord's paying them. So it's
Right.
really good to spend some
Hmm.
money for someone that is you could love I mean, your broker can be your best friend and someone that you totally trust. There's still someone that's getting paid only if the deal's getting done. So to have that peace of mind, like you spoke about, for whatever the amount is, to go the coaching program or someone
Yeah.
representing you, um, man, talk about peace of mind on a thing you're gonna live
Yeah.
with for 10 years. And it can be the make or
Yeah. And
break
something I
agreement.
That's right. And it's something I want to share that I think is really relevant, especially in a post-pandemic world now. Okay, things are going slower. It takes longer to build out. I had a client today. My client to me, she said, this is the date that I want my store to open. And I said, it's not going to be open by then. She said, well, I want it to open that date. And I said, well, there's no way I said, you're not going to get the lease for 3 weeks, right? And then we're going to have to negotiate it. Then you've got to design the space. You've got to get permits and contractors. You've got to build it. Your equipment has to be installed. And I was bringing her down to earth because right now, Guy, over 50% of tenants in America, business owners who are opening a new location, over 50% find themselves in the undesirable spot of paying rent before their doors open. They did not negotiate a floating fixturing period, right? Even so, if you're not careful, you could be paying rent for months and months and months because your contractor let you down, because the city didn't get your permitting done, right? Because the equipment you needed wasn't available. And that was because nobody told you not to have a fixed commencement date. It should have been floating. Like we usually know, because it's going to take us 5 months to do it. Let's have that start once the permits are in place. Permitting is the number one problem stopping tenants from opening on time right now.
Sure. It's always been a challenge, even more so since, I just had a friend that's a developer just talking about, the city of Denver going into the big city offices, and it's like an empty cavern. Everybody's working from home. The only thing that's open is the cashier's desk. So, it's a challenge for sure. And that is, I've done it myself with our Anytime Fitness clubs. And we've had people in our system where if they've written it right, if their broker has written it right, or their legal counsel has written it right, if there's a delay, they're like, I'm still getting 3 or 4 months of rent abatement where they don't have to pay. They have time to ramp up in the business. We've had them get delayed and be like, okay, it's not a big problem. But then we've had other ones where it was a fixed date and they're burning free rent. So they're paying, getting no revenue, and they don't have that ramp up period that they kind of counted on when they negotiated the lease. So that's another huge aspect. Well, so if someone has a broker, not mutually exclusive to working with Mr. Dale Willerton, the lease coach, you work all over the country. I can say from personal experience, as busy as he is with his team and his resources, whenever I've wanted to have a conversation, it's done in a reasonable amount of time. And with Dale, you're kind of old school this way, and this is a huge compliment. It's like, when I have time with you, I have time with you. It's not like you're doing 19 other things like a lot of the people, myself included. I'm guilty. But when you say you're going to talk, we're going to have a conversation, I know I have your full, and you come prepared all the time. It's unique and it's very much appreciated. And I can't thank you enough for being on this program. I bet it helps out a ton of people. That's why I do the podcast. But it doesn't happen. Can't help if I don't have the right people on it. And you're the who that helps us and make sure that we get good leases and good lease renewals. So thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate you.
You're welcome. And I want to remind all the viewers and listeners that if you'd like a complimentary copy of Negotiating Commercial Leases and Renewals for Dummies, all you have to do is go to our website. You can go on Amazon and pay $20, but you go to the leasecoach.com and you fill in the information or email me directly. You can request a complimentary copy that is usually shipped out to you within a couple of days.
Yes. And I've referred you to people and they're like, I got the book that's like 2 days later. So that's great. And I'll also have it linked in the show notes, how to contact you as well.
Okay. Wonderful.
All right. Thank you so much, Dale. Have a wonderful day.